Welcome to week 12 of our Explainer. Today we're diving into spiritual integration, values, religious trauma, and non-coercive care. We're stepping into a profound and honestly a highly sensitive area of biblical counseling ethics. It's all about that critical intersection of trauma, spiritual integration, and care.
If you've ever sat across from a hurting person, you already know that the very tools we use to bring comfort can sometimes be the exact things that trigger fear. Picture this. You're sitting quietly in your counseling room. A new counselee walks in, looking for guidance. They genuinely want biblical help. But right before you begin, they tense up, pull back a little and say, "I want biblical help, but please don't pray over me." How do you respond to that? Your first instinct might be confusion, or maybe even a quick urge to correct their theology right then and there. But wait, as ethical, trauma-sensitive counselors, we really have to hit pause and look deeper.
The Restoring Hope Ministries ethics guidelines tell us we need to start by looking at the observable facts. No speculating, no throwing around loaded spiritual labels. So what's the observable fact here? It's not that the counselee lacks faith or that they're just being rebellious. The fact is simply this: they are visibly fearful. And when we actually take the time to listen, we find out exactly why. In their past, prayer and scripture weren't used to comfort them. Nope. They were weaponized. They were used to expose, control, and shame them right in front of other people. So you see, their fear is a direct, completely understandable, and deeply human response to how spiritual practices were misused against them.
To really help this person, we have to call what they experienced exactly what it is. According to the Restoring Hope Ministries glossary, we're talking about spiritual abuse. That's the misuse of spiritual authority, doctrine, scripture, or a ministry role to control, silence, shame, exploit, or harm another person. Understanding this definition is just absolutely crucial for our practice. Why? Because it takes the blame completely off the victim and puts it exactly where it belongs, on the unethical use of power. It wasn't God who caused this trauma. It was human beings who misused their trusted roles to exploit the very people they were supposed to be shepherding. And that brings us to a massive distinction we have to help our counselees make. We literally need to draw a line in the sand between the trauma caused by human control and the true, inviting nature of God. Look, abusive spiritual authority always relies on control, shaming, and coercion. Always. But God's character? That's defined by care, gentleness, and an open invitation. A huge danger in biblical counseling is confusing God's character with those abusive uses of spiritual authority. As counselors, we've got to provide absolute clarity on our values. We need to make sure the counselee knows, without a shadow of a doubt, that the profound harm they went through does not reflect the God of the Bible.
Actually, the Old Testament gives us this beautiful theological anchor for this exact idea. Isaiah 42:3 says of the coming Messiah, "A bruised reed he will not break, and a faintly burning wick he will not quench." Think about that imagery for a second. Christ's ultimate gentleness is aimed precisely at the vulnerable. A bruised reed is already bent, right? It's already damaged. So if your counselee comes to you as a bruised reed broken by past church experiences, the ethical, Christ-like response is to protect them and bind up those wounds. We definitely don't apply more spiritual pressure that might just snap them right in two.
Jesus himself reinforces this incredible gentleness. He says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." He's offering an easy yoke and a light burden. Now contrast that with the heavy, exposing, crushing burdens placed on our fearful counselee by abusive leaders. It's night and day. In our counseling rooms, the care we provide has to truly feel like the rest Jesus promises. It absolutely cannot just be a continuation of the heavy lifting and the sheer anxiety demanded by spiritual coercion.
When you start looking, you'll see this unified scriptural thread of non-coercive invitation woven all throughout the New Testament. Just look at the examples. Jesus shows immense patience with the woman at the well in John 4, meeting her right where she is, without forcing immediate compliance. In Acts 17, Paul is engaging the culture in respectful dialogue, not a forced debate. Romans 14 commands freedom of conscience, warning us not to judge another's servant. In 2 Corinthians 1:24, Paul explicitly says he doesn't lord it over their faith, he operates with profound humility. And then 1 Peter 3 reminds us to answer people with gentleness and respect. So what's the takeaway here? Coercion is just completely absent from the biblical model of care.
Okay, so here is the crux of it. Biblical conviction without coercion. We can, and honestly we absolutely should, have strong biblical convictions, but we must hold them without being coercive. As the ethics manual hammers home, holding on to our theological confession doesn't require us to use spiritual authority to force compliance. In fact, it strictly forbids it. Ethical boundaries are exactly what keep our love and our guidance from twisting into possession, an unhealthy rescue attempt, or just plain control. Our ethical framework reminds us that the Bible can be this incredible book of deep comfort to ease distress and offer new hope. When we carefully select the appropriate passages, we make Scripture available as a true healing balm. But we're also strongly warned that the Bible can be misused in counseling, promising things it doesn't or forcing a certain meaning in a high-pressure situation. Yes, Scripture is authoritative, but how the counselor applies it, that has to be remarkably patient, rightly handled, and entirely aware of consent. It must never, ever be used as a weapon to dominate or overwhelm someone.
So how do we actually pull this off practically in the counseling room? It comes down to modeling consent-based spiritual practices. This is a total game changer for your practice. Step 1, explain the spiritual practice. Tell the counselee exactly what a prayer or reading a scripture is going to look like so there are zero surprises. Step 2, ask for explicit consent. Just a simple, would it be all right if we looked at a psalm together? It really empowers them. And step 3, and this might be the most critical one, respect a no without spiritualizing it. If they decline prayer, we do not label them rebellious. We respect their autonomy. We have to recognize that a no is often just a self-protective boundary that stems from deep religious trauma. Honoring that no is literally the very first step in restoring their trust. Well, that brings us right to your Week 12 assignment. This is designed to be the exact empowering tool you need to practically heal that fearful counselee we talked about earlier. You're going to be writing a spiritually integrated care plan for a counselee who's been harmed by a prior church misusing prayer or scripture. And alongside that, you'll be putting together a key portfolio artifact, your personal spiritual integration and non-coercion statement. As you're structuring these statements and building your care plans, I want you to keep these 4 priorities front and center. First, actively protect the vulnerable from any further spiritual control. Second, prioritize their autonomy and consent in absolutely every single interaction. Third, understand that restoring trust happens gradually. It takes time, it can't be rushed, and it definitely can't be demanded. And finally, clearly articulate your ministry boundaries so the counselee knows exactly what to expect from you. That's how you create a truly safe and predictable environment. I want to leave you with a final, somewhat provocative question to carry with you. When that fearful counselee sits across from you, guarding their fragile heart because of the deep wounds inflicted by abusive spiritual authority, what are they going to experience from you? Will your care feel like the heavy hand of coercion, or will it reflect the safe, patient, and gentle invitation of Christ? Thank you so much for engaging with this critical material today. I really can't wait to see how your care plans bring true, lasting healing to the people who need it most.